Welcome to the Melanie Rose Killick story, 3-part podcast.
And you carried him, did you know what he was before he was born?
Well, in my heart, yes, because I'd been banging on about this little boy, for, 20 years.
And John didn't like Sebastian.
He did not like the name Sebastian. I still don't know why. He just said no. And, the name Seamus had come to me in the middle of the night. I woke up and it was like a neon sign.
I did like Alexander because I do have an Alexander.
You have an Alexander. Well, so did I.
And I was looking at that letter that you wrote and I went, there is nothing wrong with Alexander. It's a beautiful name,
Well,
John.
I felt the same thing and, and I send my love to all Alexanders out there.
Too funny.
that might be listening. But yeah, I loved the name Alexander and I loved the name Seamus. And
Seamus means what?
Well, it is an Irish name and it's the Gaelic equivalent of James. And James, I've looked up what James means, and James means he who supplants. So it's not terribly exciting.
No,
really.
but it's a name. We like it.
It is, but again, I don't know if I got that message in the middle of the night from Seamus before he was born, picking his own.
And here I am saying
it's
Seamus. It's spelled Seamus, but it's not, is it?
It's pronounced Seamus. Yeah, that's right.
Beautiful.
So it is a beautiful, I love the sound of it, but it is spelt in the traditional Celtic way, which is Seamus.
Yeah,
and it's a common mistake. Plenty of people
Good. So I don't
came to me and
totally out.
No, not at all. And I don't know if you noticed, but I actually put up another page on the blog just helping people.
How to pronounce
Seamus. Yes.
I thought, what's she saying to me?
And I found a nice little recording of an Irishman pronouncing the name. So if you click on there, you'll hear this Irishman pronouncing
Great.
Seamus.
So we had Seamus. Where was Seamus born?
When
and where?
Seamus was born at the Young District Hospital on the 7th of November 2012. He was born by emergency caesarean section. I had been in labour and...
You didn't play the game properly, did you, either?
Well, I like to think Seamus didn't play the game properly, but anyway, we won't get there. No blame.
No, not at all.
So, he became distressed, so they organised an emergency caesarean, and through the course of the caesarean, the epidural failed, so they had to put me under, and a few things went a little bit skewy while I was under, which flagged to the surgeon and the obstetrician that something else was going on that possibly needed to be investigated. So they organised an X-ray straight away, which showed a lot of fluid on my lung. So they requested a CT scan. So Seamus was born at midnight on Wednesday, the 7th of November.
Yeah.
And by the Thursday morning at 8 o'clock, I was being shipped off in an ambulance down to the imaging place down in the main street and given a CT scan. And the results were back in at lunchtime, and it was that rare moment in the day when I was by myself in the room. So John had been in there all morning and he had left to go and I think he'd gone to collect his other children who hadn't met Seamus at that stage. And my mum was on her way. So I was in the room with Seamus wrapped up in his
Beautiful and snug.
Yes, in his little Perspex cot. And the obstetrician came in and he came in with one of the nurses, and I could just tell by the look on their face that something wasn't quite right.
What were you thinking? Or you weren't thinking?
I wasn't thinking anything at that point. And the obstetrician said, I thought that something perhaps wasn't right, which is why I sent you to the CT scan. And we've got the results back, and the results are showing that you have advanced cancer. So the cancer is on the bones and it's on the liver, and there is no cure. We can only manage the disease and manage the symptoms. And then he became quite teary because he's not in the business of having to deliver that kind of news. He's in the business of handing people beautiful little newborn babies and the celebration that comes with that. And the nurse, who was Wendy, and she was lovely, and she squeezed my foot and said, you know, can I get you anything? And are you just checking in with me that I was okay? And while they were talking to me, I had this kind of out-of-body experience where I felt like I was standing beside myself. I've had this happen a few times now. So I was kind of standing beside myself, and I felt these words rise up. And it wasn't like I heard a voice. It was like I felt the words, if that makes sense.
It does.
So the words were, "Don't worry, everything's going to be okay." And I trusted that message implicitly. I thought, I have to go within and I have to listen to that message because it was so strong and it came up from within and enveloped me. So over the course of the next couple of days, an oncologist was located to come and speak with me. And he came in with the oncology nurse, and it was kind of what he wasn't saying that was flagging the seriousness of it. He was really picking his words. I mean, he was being quite sensitive to the fact that I had just had a baby. So he was being mindful of how, you know, much to tell me, and then between him and the oncology nurse, they explained to me that they would get me on some hormone treatment, which is what I had been taking before, and then they would aim to send me to Canberra Hospital, where there was access to different treatment, including radiation, and also the ability to have different tests like MRI scans, and that they would be giving me palliative treatment and managing my pain.
Because this is terminal, they're talking?
Yes. So palliative treatment will manage your pain and will send you home to spend quality time with your family. And I was sitting there listening to this, and I kept going back to that voice, that voiceless voice, those words that came up in me that assured me, and I felt it. You know, I felt so relaxed. I felt peaceful when I experienced those words. And again, this is what I'm talking about when I talk about belief. So what do you believe? You might have 10 people telling you something. You can choose to believe that, or you can get in touch with yourself and you can choose to believe that, because you always have a choice about what you choose to think. And a thought that you think over and over and over again just becomes a belief. So we went off to Canberra Hospital. I had radiation. I had all these scans. They removed a litre of fluid out of the pleural cavity, which was compressing my left lung.
Did Seamus go with you?
Oh, yes.
Yep, good.
Yeah. And that was an interesting experience, because we were initially told that Seamus couldn't join us on the oncology ward. And John and I were devastated, because we thought, well, that means that we're going to be separated. So John would have to go home and with this newborn baby and just do these day trips to Canberra Hospital, and I'd be on the oncology ward. So when we actually showed up to Canberra Hospital, the nurse that greeted us, and her name was Cheryl, and she was so warm and so beautiful. And she showed us to this room, down this rabbit warren
As it is.
of the oncology ward in Canberra Hospital. And she showed us to this room at the very end, and it was gigantic. Like there could have been 3 beds in there. And it had this big old leather couch in there and a couple of other chairs and a bed. And she was explaining to us that the couch opened up as a sofa bed. And John and I were kind of looking at each other, and we said to her, well, we were told that John and Seamus couldn't stay with us, and that John would either have to find accommodation on the hospital grounds or just make day trips to Geelong. And she said, oh, rubbish. You have to be together.
Oh.
There is no other way to do this. You have to be together. So I don't care who told you that, but they can answer to me.
Oh.
Now I'm going to organise you a meal, and we're going to get some things organised for Seamus. And we were like, wow.
Because he's days old, isn't he?
Yeah.
Literally days old.
So within an hour, someone from maternity had left this cot and all of these nappies and sterilising equipment and creams at the door for us. And yeah, I mean, we made that hospital room our home for the next week, while I went through more tests and had radiation and the other treatments that they gave me. And then they sent me home. So I got home, I think it was almost 3 weeks in total from when Seamus was born until I actually got home with him. And when I got home, it was so important for me to be back in my own bed, living this, in inverted commas, normal, familiar life, adjusting to this new baby, and getting my thoughts together about how my life was going to unfold from that point. And I had heard about this author called Anita Moorjani, and she wrote a book called Dying to Be Me. And she had a cancer diagnosis. She battled cancer for 4 years. She was at the end stages of her illness. She became unconscious. She was hospitalised. And the doctors were saying to her family, she's in organ failure. So don't expect her to be alive in 24 hours from now. We suggest you get the family here. And she had a near-death experience. So she left her body. She stepped outside of herself. She couldn't understand what all the fuss was about because she felt so amazing and she felt blissful and well, and everyone's standing around the bed crying, and she's like, I'm fine, I feel absolutely fine. And she experienced whatever label you want to put to it, source, energy, God, and she had this immediate understanding of what life was all about. And she had a conversation, for lack of a better word, with her father, who had died some years earlier, and also with her best friend, who had died of cancer some years earlier. And the message that they gave her was, you have a choice. So you can go back into your body and you will heal from cancer, and then you will choose to live your life fearlessly. Or you can keep going and just be absorbed into this blissful experience that some people call the afterlife or heaven. And so she made a choice to come back into her body, even though she knew that her body was very ravaged by the cancer. I think she only weighed about, I did the calculations, from pounds. I think she weighed about 35 or 38 kilos. She had open lesions on her body. Physically she was racked from the illness. And she made the choice to go back into that body. And within 4 or 5 days, the tumours had shrunk by 70%. And within 5 weeks, she was completely cancer-free. And there is no medical explanation as to why she healed, because she was in organ failure from end-stage cancer. So I read her book in 2 days, which was easy to do because I wasn't well and I was in bed. I just,
that flew the time part.
I napped and woke up and read the book, and napped and woke up and read the book, and it was an incredible inspiration. So when you have a diagnosis of cancer, you have to make the decision as to where you're going to put your thoughts. So you can get on Dr. Google and scare the bejesus out of yourself.
I was banned from Dr. Google on a number of occasions. My doctor would go, Pat, Dr. Google, banned.
Yes.
And I went, okay.
Google is an amazing tool, like the mind, but we can really use it in the wrong way, like the mind.
But yeah.
So I chose not to look at statistics and survival rates and to squash my life into a number. That just wasn't going to work for me. So instead I chose to look to be inspired by people who had done the impossible, who had achieved a miracle. And when I think about Seamus and the miracle that he is, I mean, I always knew that he was coming, but I was told that he wouldn't. But I believed otherwise. And so he was created. He came because I believed it. So what else can I create in my life? And I remember in those weeks after we came home, and I would stand over the bassinet of this tiny little newborn baby and look at him and go, I did not wait all of these years to see you and know you. I knew you were coming. My heart told me that all this time. How can I now just go and die? No. It just doesn't feel right. So what can I do in my power, within my power, to change the outcome of this? And so Christmas came and went, and I was still here. Because
you were given till that Christmas, weren't you?
Was
that the story?
It was inferred.
Right.
It was inferred that I really didn't have a long time to live. And I think that was really great that no one, gave me an end date, because I think it's really easy to attach your mind to that. If someone says to you, you've got 6 months to live, then your mind's going to hook in to that, and then you're going to create your experience around that. So I've never really talked prognosis. There's never been dates or time frames or anything. It's never been discussed, because you make your own.
That's it. There is no end date.
Well, there is. We're all terminal. Well, two things there. One, we're all terminal. Yeah. One, we're all going to die in terms of the physical form. But I love that you say there is no end date, because we don't actually die. We just change form. So our spirit or soul, and all that is I'm sitting here now looking at you, and you're looking at me, but what's doing the looking? It's not just the eyes. It's not just the physical motorized experience of the body. There's something behind, within, around, that is making the connection between us.
It's amazing. It's very amazing. So where's John in all of this? You had to deliver the news to John pretty early in the stage, and your mum had been through that journey with you before.
Yes.
So here's John as a new player on the field, so to speak.
Yeah.
And your little boy. So how is John in all of that with you?
It's interesting because we've touched on that a couple of times over the last couple of years, but we've talked about it a lot recently. And he's been able to open up and be a little more honest about how he felt. So he was totally devastated. And he was thinking, I'm going to be left to bring up this baby by myself. And he often said to me that he looked to me, to what I was doing, for his cue. So because I had been lucky enough to tune into that incredible feeling inside me that said, don't worry, everything's going to be okay. And I trusted that. And so that's how I approached the experience in my life. He saw me doing that, so he relaxed.
And knew it was okay.
And he knew it was okay. And so we just went day to day.
And then you married him.
And then we got married, yeah, last December. And the way it all came together was actually quite funny. A couple of times we had discussed marriage, just in a very relaxed way. And it was me bringing it up, which was always very odd to me because I had been this little girl that had nightmares about white weddings.
Bridezillas.
Oh, I dreamt that I was in this foofy white dress, and I didn't have any shoes, and the bridesmaids were these horrible girls from school that I didn't like.
Oh, it's never like that.
And I was marrying someone that I didn't even know, and there was always lots of angst, and it was horrible. Nightmares.
Wedding scars.
Oh,
everywhere.
So I grew up going, that's obviously not for me, or something horrible happened in a past life that I'm not really interested in marriage in this life. And I just felt like it was entrapment.
Well, it's never always like that, might I add.
So I have learned.
Yes.
So in the times that it came up in conversation, John kind of ummed and ahed about it, and there was never any kind of definite, decision or plan or anything like that. And it got to October of last year, and we really needed a holiday because we were frazzled and tired, and we needed to get away and just reconnect with each other. And he asked where I wanted to go, and straight away I said Uluru, because I had wanted to go to Uluru since I first got sick in 2008. I couldn't tell you why. I'd never really given much thought to the place before, but I got sick and all I wanted to do was go there. It was like it was calling me to go there, to go home. So I said, let's go to Uluru. So we planned this, big fancy holiday, and we decided to stay in the nicest hotel, and we booked these tours, and John made a joke to me. Oh, isn't this funny? It's like we're having the honeymoon but without the wedding.
Oh.
So we laughed, and then we stopped and went, well, should we just get married? And he went, okay. It was as simple as that. And in the next couple of days, my brother, who lives in Tasmania, contacted my mother and said, I'd like to come for Christmas. And my son, his son, Mason, was going to come down from Newcastle. And I thought, we're all going to be together. Let's do this. Let's pick a date when we can all be together. And it was the 20th of December, which is actually my brother's birthday. So then there was this mad, frazzled rush to put together a wedding.
But there was no white wedding dress.
There was no white wedding dress. And I did try to keep an open mind. So when we went into this bridal shop, I thought, maybe I will just try one on, just in case all of those fears, they're going to amount to nothing. And I might look quite pretty, in some kind of white, lacy, bohemian, floaty. Anyway, I tried it on, and all I can say is that it was wrong on every level. And I felt that I looked like a lace-covered hippopotamus.
Oh, dear.
It was just not for me at all. So I went back to the drawing board.
And you're politely taking it off, going, oh, no, not this one.
Saying, I knew it wasn't for me. And so I, ended up choosing a dress that was one of my favourite colours, which is like a burgundy plum colour, and, had it all fitted. And the lady who ran the shop, she just worked with me around it. It was really beautiful. We created something lovely, and she was hand dyeing lace and stitching it on, and it was a beautiful day. It was intimate. It was small. It was only the immediate family. Friends contributed in a lot of ways to help us have a beautiful day, and it was just really lovely. And it was just a celebration of our relationship, and it didn't feel like anything changed. It just kind of felt like a normal day, except it was a really happy day, and we all looked quite fancy.
Yeah, woohoo.
So that's the very unromantic story behind how we got married.
But it's a beautiful one.
Yes,
it's lovely.
And it suited us.
And it's different. Everyone's different, and that's what is so good about everybody, is we all have different things that we love. And where to from here for you? What's on the list?
Gosh, that's a good question. From where I stand now, there was about 15 thoughts.
I could see your mind just race.
They all collided, and I was like, wow, where do I start? It's been about me getting a lot of clarity and a lot of focus. So given that in January we got some test results that weren't good. So I was told from a medical oncology perspective that I had exhausted all my pathways of the treatment that I had been on, and that my option now was to go to chemotherapy. And my decision was no.
Why, Mel? Why did you decide not to do that?
Again, it came down to my intuition.
Yeah.
And to me, that pathway of chemotherapy, from a medical oncology perspective, it's a known trajectory. It's okay, we've gotten to this point, there's this particular disease progression, this is how we treat this. And I've never played by the rules.
The rules are meant to be broken.
Well,
I've broken many of them, I'm sure.
I've enjoyed breaking many of them over the years myself. So I just really felt like it was not for me. And when I said no to that, I felt like 100 different possibilities opened up.
There's probably people sitting there going, but why wouldn't you have treatment if it's going to prolong or get rid of or give you more time to be with Seamus, to spend time on this earth? Mel, why aren't you doing that treatment? Why? What do you tell yourself, and what is your answer to that?
The thing with chemotherapy, having done it before, is that I know how ill it makes you. And I would rather have an experience of quality with my family than quantity. And it comes back to this idea of life extension for the sake of life extension. So at what point do you draw the line and say, is this still living or is this just not dying? So I came to terms with death a long time ago. And that was another beautiful gift. Because when death is on your doorstep, you suddenly wake up to the fact that you are alive. And then you want to live your best possible life. So part of that decision was around my quality of life. Another part of that decision was based around hope. So saying no to chemotherapy was me saying yes to hope. And that I can only relate to people my personal experience. And all of my decisions around my treatment have been made in full consultation with my medical team. So I've had extensive conversations with different oncologists, with the oncology nurse, with the breast care nurse. It wasn't just a blind, uneducated decision.
Yeah.
You know, so because the thing is, there is no right or wrong.
No, and this is your experience too. This is your journey and your walk, and it's what you've chosen to do. And at the end of the day, could treatment give you 2 months? You know, like, is there any guarantee? I suppose at the end of the day, like, there is none.
No, and who knows if I go and start chemotherapy and then walk out on the road and get hit by a bus?
That's right. Yeah, there.
Again, it comes back to this whole reality that we are all terminal. We're all going to leave this physical experience of who we are and go back to the source. You know, we just change form. We can't. The essence of who we really are just cannot die. So once you recognize that, you lose the fear of death. And then you really start to have a quality of life. And that's what happened to me. And I know it's why I'm here over 2 years later. And sitting here and feeling well and able to share my story with other people. There is something greater going on, but it's also something that I'm contributing to at every moment with the way I think. So it is now at the point when you've got medical oncology saying to you, there is no hope anymore, that you say, okay, thank you very much. And I'll continue to be under your guidance, but I will make my own decisions about my treatment. And all of my medical, you know, every part of my medical team, that they are fantastic people. That they are warm, they're compassionate, and I'm sure that they would love nothing more than to have someone on their books that healed from cancer. So why can't I take that risk? Why don't I grasp that? Because I've been told there's no hope. So do I believe that? Well, I'm choosing not to, because there's always hope. So it's where it's how I'm starting to think now about how my future is going to unfold. So I have to start thinking about what's going to happen in the future.
So will you have scans now every so often to see?
I'll always continue under the guidance of my medical team, and I like the treatment that I was on before is continuing. I haven't stopped all of my treatment. Things are just kind of going on as they were before, and things are just being managed on a day-to-day basis. But while I feel well, and while I can concentrate and focus on the stories that inspire me instead of the stories that make me feel really afraid, then it just seems like a no-brainer choice to me.